Welcome, Vaginismus Sister. I'm so glad you're here and you're taking this time to be in the energy of kicking some vaginismus butt. This is a journey that is your fight song. Unfortunately, having had these cards dealt to you by life, by God, by source, by nature, whatever you resonate with, is an incredibly tough place to be. And you were given this battle that you could argue you did not ask for. It may be the most difficult thing that you have been experiencing or have ever experienced in your life. And I really see it as the biggest test that I went through in my personal journey. So I want to honor you and acknowledge you for being here, being in the state of hope and action and communication, conversation on these topics, because that means that you are fighting the fight. You are going inwards. You're allowing yourself to make connections, gather insights, connect with people to help you take each next step forward. And those steps are going to lead you to any intimacy goal that you have set for yourself to be part of your reality. I never thought I would be having penis and vagina sex in an enjoyable way. I didn't think it was possible. And today I'm an example that this is an experience that we can have, even though it was the most excruciating pain that I had ever experienced at the time. So I just wanted to open our Q&R session with these words. I also recognize this looks a little bit creepy, the 4-eye thing going on, but this is my shirt. And let's begin with our incredible question. So our first question inspired me to also offer a gift to you, which is a video that exists in one of my programs called Pleasant and Effective Dilating that actually answers this question in a lot of detail, and probably more detail than I will touch on today. Okay, so please listen to the answer and the question since you don't even know what it is yet. And if you would like to receive this gift, plus another side gift, just shoot me a message and I'm going to send you the link. Okay, so the question is from a fellow Vaginismus sister. What are your tips for getting a pap smear before having penetrative sex? I've heard it's easier after PIV. My doctor told me that women with no clinical sexual history, like me, don't need to have one. But I've been experiencing other reproductive issues and may need to have a speculum in. I'm able to get up to dilator 6 in, but in a very slow process. And I don't think that the medical professionals can take that amount of time with me. Thank you so much. First of all, huge celebrations on your progress, right? I invite every one of you to take a moment and think back to when dilator 1 perhaps seemed impossible and was impossible. Perhaps a Q-tip was impossible. And being at whatever stage you're in your case, being on dilator number 6, as well as all of the emotional neurotic healing that you've been doing with yourself, that's incredible. So taking a moment to really acknowledge you and celebrate you for that. Next, I agree that having a pelvic exam, a speculum inside, right, a pap smear, a pap test as we may refer to it in different countries, it is not absolutely necessary before you engage in penetrative sex. Of course, it is done for a reason, to test our bodies and to make sure that everything is okay health-wise with our vaginal flora, with our vagina in general, that there's no growth on the cervix. And still, this is your absolute choice. So before I say anything, I want to preface with, please don't ever feel absolutely obligated or pressured into having a pelvic exam if you don't feel like it's the right choice for you. And especially if you don't feel like you're ready for it yet, because you may feel like you want to or need to get one, but you're simply not ready yet. And what that means is setting aside the time to come to a place of readiness and going through all of the preparatory steps required. Okay. Now, in your case, considering the reproductive issues that it sounds like you're experiencing, you want to prepare yourself for this. So I love that you're here and you're asking this question. How do we get ready for a pelvic exam? This includes the process of in the actual office of the medical professional, but also a few other preparatory steps that I'm going to start with. First of all, it's important to find a medical professional who actually has experience being with, working with, conversing with women and vulva owners who have experienced vaginismus. So it's important to ask your medical professional and almost test them on their knowledge on vaginismus, right? Including not just asking, are you familiar with vaginismus, and having a nod and having a yes, but really interviewing that person. Are they your person for the insertion of the speculum during your exam? If you, for any reason, decide that this doesn't seem like the right human for me because there's some sort of uncertainty or lack of knowledge about how to approach me as a vaginismus sister, it's important that you look elsewhere, right? So you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And this is a shift that's important to make in our medical communities, is for us to really advocate for ourselves and select the people that feel right for us. So I invite you to reach out to this person with the question, but also with the request of allotting more time for your appointment. This is critical. Already, we, in certain cases, have a 15-minute allotment of time for any sort of visit to the doctor's office. And this is ridiculous. We know that the medical community is a business, and hence they want to make their turnaround faster and more efficient and such. And the highest priority is your health. And so you get to stand up for that and ask maybe for 2 back-to-back sessions or 3 back-to-back sessions for that doctor to be with you. If this is not an option, I strongly advise you to find someone who will allow you to do this, because these people do exist, and women that I have supported have been on the hunt for medical professionals who really understand vaginismus and honor the requirements of what it takes to have a pelvic exam while still partially experiencing vaginismus. And they have had 2 appointments back to back be granted to them. So if they could do it, you could do it too. What's next? When we arrive, we want to create an environment that is as closely mimicking the dilating experiences that you have at home, that already feel very safe, that already feel like they will be successful, right? So before I even go there, and I'm just thinking of another point here, it's actually really important to make sure that you're at the stage of your journey that is appropriate for even attempting a pelvic exam. In my opinion, this means being able to insert dilator 3 from a typical 8 dilator set, or perhaps even you're comfortable with knowing that you can insert dilator 4 from a typical dilator set. Considering you're at dilator 6, that means you're past the hump of what it means to insert a speculum, because a speculum is about the size of dilator 2 or 3. Okay, so you've checked that box. And for anyone else listening, this is a really important requirement, because you don't want to feel like you haven't been able to accept dilator 3 with ease, and now you're putting yourself to the test in this new environment for your nervous system, which of course adds on an additional layer of stress, and expecting from your body to be able to, quote unquote, perform this task in this higher stress environment. Okay, so that's critical to keep in mind. So how do we create now an environment at the doctor's office that closely mimics our process at home? We literally need to think outside the box and change the rules of the game, as I already shared about, to start with the conversation with our doctor. And that means creating an environment that feels nourishing. You can bring your music. Yes, that's allowed. You can bring some incense or some pleasant essential oil that you're used to smelling maybe and engaging your senses with in order to help your nervous system sink down into a state of rest. You are allowed to bring a pillow or a blanket, and especially if you're given more time, to do a breathing exercise. Practice your reverse Kegels with the doctor not even in the office, just laying on those crinkly sheets of paper at the doctor's office, maybe removing them even if that helps you, and creating an environment that as closely mimics the one at home. From here, what do you usually do in your dilating practice? Well, you've got your dilators with you. This is something that we may forget about, is the notion that we can't have our practice tools, our partners in dilating with us at the office, and you absolutely can. It's important that you have this conversation with your doctor to let them know what your plan is in terms of preparation. And I encourage you to have your dilators there and to literally do your own dilating practice in order to come to a place of being confident that in a moment you can replace that dilator with the speculum. Okay. So let's talk about pleasure. If you have heard me speak about this before, you probably know how important sexual arousal is as a signal to our body that our body should expect a guest up in there, a guest, a dilator being inserted in our vagina. Sexual arousal is kind of like the doorbell that a guest would ring before entering the dinner party. It is the signal that tells the host of the party that someone is at the door and is waiting for the door to be opened to invite them in. Sexual arousal is that doorbell. What does that mean? That means that as soon as your body has signals of pleasure happening, arousal happening in the body, it actually sends a signal to the brain. The brain then sends a signal down to the cervix, which is the back wall of your vagina that separates the vaginal canal from the uterus. Let's say this is the vagina, the cervix is up here. The brain sends a signal to the cervix to say, we have a guest coming. Please move up and out of the way to make room for this guest. Because depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle, the cervix may be sitting just a little bit away from your vaginal opening, meaning in this spaciousness, there is no room for a dilator. There's no room for a penis. Typically, there is enough room for a tampon without sexual arousal, okay? But the cervix, when it receives the message from the brain, it's going to move up and out of the way to about 5 to 6 inches away from the vaginal opening, elongating the vagina. This is a process called tenting, and increasing the lubrication and the blood flow in the area so it can prepare the environment for the penetrative sex or the dilating practice, whatever it may be. This means that without sexual arousal, we're actually shocking the body. We're having that guest, when the hostess is not ready to receive, or the host is not ready to receive the guest for the dinner party, we're having that guest like barge the door open. And because the door may also have been locked, they're like trying to kick in the door. And what happens is that tension, right? The stopping action, because nobody knew they were coming. The door is still locked. If sexual arousal had happened, the door would get unlocked by the host and they would be nicely welcomed into the party. This is what sexual arousal is all about. And the question sometimes becomes, well, do I have to have sexual arousal upon each penetrative experience? My answer to that is yes. We don't want anything in our body unless we're already feeling the invitation, the pleasure, the desire. When we train ourselves enough to be able to create this experience and also to have enough awareness and control of our pelvic floor muscles, we can have penetration without arousal. And this is because we can have a mastery, the mind to body connection, to be at a masterful level to create relaxation in the body without arousal being present. That's why we can insert tampons without arousal being present. That's why we could have a pelvic exam without arousal being present, but it still on some subconscious level shocks the body because the body didn't expect it. What does this mean? We've got to include the sexual arousal that I encourage everybody to include in their dilating practice also at the medical professional's office during a pelvic exam. And I know what you're thinking. The shame-steeped culture around sex and pleasure, how is that even going to happen? Well, it's up to us to advocate. It's up to us to create the culture, to start asking these questions, to start getting permission for this experience to be a normal, because it is a normal part of life and a necessary part before any medical procedure that involves invading our body. So if you do have that private time to be able to lay on that same bed that the pelvic exam is going to be happening on, it would be perfect for you to engage in self-pleasure, whatever that means to you, right? I speak about the erotic languages in other programs and the sexually liberated program that we have. This is a very big, necessary part of the exploration of finding your authentic erotic self, which means sexual arousal for you may not even involve touch of the genitals. Maybe you're the energetic erotic language that doesn't require genital touch for creating this superpower of arousal and relaxation in the body. Maybe your language is more so the sexual and genital touch is typically part of the process, or it's the sensual, or it's the kinky. And all of this knowledge about yourself is actually quite important to understand how your nervous system is wired to feel arousal and to feel safe and curious, which are the key ingredients of also feeling pleasure in the body. So let's say, however you know is great for you when it comes to sexual arousal, you have the opportunity to do that on the same bed before the medical professional walks in. Perfect. If you don't have this opportunity, I do highly encourage you to still practice this arousal tradition with yourself, whether it's before coming to the office, if hopefully you live close by, or even in the washroom before you enter the doctor's office. This may be the breakthrough for you. And so let's take down all the walls, let's take down all the insecurities that we might have around doing this, even in the washroom, and know that this is what can be best for our body and what can guarantee a neutral or even pleasurable pelvic exam. Okay. So sexual arousal has happened. You've got the right to be able to insert a speculum yourself. Nowhere is there a rule book that says the doctor has to do it. If you get lucky enough to be with a medical professional who allows you to really take back this power and do a lot of the insertion yourself before they take over, then I highly recommend that you do this if this actually feels like the right path for you. Okay, possibly you may feel that inserting it yourself is going to create some more core tension, maybe not allowing you to fully relax. And if that's the case, there's an alternative path. There always is. So we get to choose. The alternative is that you explain the situation you're in and you really ask for the communication channel with that doctor to be on point. That means with every step that you take, can you please ask me for consent and for me to nod my head that I'm ready for whatever comes next? Hopefully, I trust that this won't be too difficult. And if that medical professional is not communicating with you enough, continue to ask for those cues, right? Encourage them to really meet you where you're at to really help you feel safe. So what could this mean? You may ask them, can you please start by touching my leg, my foot with the speculum as you slowly move up my leg before reaching my vulva, with consent along the way, okay? Then when you're at the vulva, can you please touch the outer labia? Only when I'm ready to move into the inner labia, we can go there. And then you can ask me, I'm about to touch the vaginal opening, is that okay? And as you do your breathing, as you do your reverse Kegels, the music is on, you have done some nervous system down regulation, potentially the morning of. For this, I highly recommend tension and trauma releasing exercises. At this moment, you have your vaginal opening being touched. And guess what? With all of the preparation here, the things that had usually happened with previous pelvic exams or penetrative attempts are no longer happening. Your legs are not closing involuntarily. Your butt is not lifting off the table. My butt lifted off the table upon my doctor like approaching me with the speculum, and I trust that many of you can relate to this. So you have already made progress, and getting to this level of touching the vaginal opening while being in a relaxed state is huge. What an amazing milestone. From here, you can slowly give your consent to move that speculum inside little by little and be in communication that full time, right? Perhaps you had just used the dilator with yourself and maybe had experienced some sexual arousal during it, maybe even orgasmed, if that feels good to you, if it happened to happen. And your body is essentially now feeling like, okay, I just did this and now I'm replacing it with another tool, the speculum. Hence, I feel like it's important to notice that these two experiences are very similar. And since you already have one success under your belt, how much easier it had become to have the speculum be inserted flawlessly. You too may choose that instead of dilating on your own just before the doctor walks in, when the medical professional is there with you, you actually ask them to do this entire process with one of the dilator sizes that you feel is appropriate. Let's say dilator 2. We do this entire process with the dilator 2 and we get up to the vaginal opening, and then the doctor inserts that dilator. So you can get used to the fact that you have another human doing this, especially if you haven't practiced partner dilating before. There's a whole different world between doing it on your own and having another human insert something inside you. So of course your body's going to react in this way at the doctor's office, as you had in the past, where it shuts down because it doesn't feel safe having this experience in the presence of another human. So you can have a practice round with dilator 2, and maybe you want another practice round with dilator 3, and then you just do it on a third time around with the speculum. And all of a sudden it is easeful. It feels good, and you have so much to celebrate. So find that person that feels like like a person you can trust, a person who cares. Communicate with them, advocate for yourself, break down all the walls that say you cannot do this and you cannot do that, and you have to have a required amount of time of 15 minutes for an appointment, and really stand up for what you deserve. And if there's a part of you that feels like, can I really ask for that? I trust, as was the case for me, there is some internal emotional healing work to be done around feeling deserving of taking up space, of taking up time, of not being too much for someone, not asking of too much, right? We have been used to being givers, people pleasers in our life. And it's time to flip the script on that. It's time to do the inner work to really feel deserving of your pleasure, your comfort, your safety, and to have someone else support you in that experience. Now, another tip for you is to ask for the smallest size speculum possible. Now, unfortunately, they call these speculums still baby speculums. I don't like that terminology. It is demeaning in some way, considering we are grown adults and we're using something that a doctor makes sure we know is not intended for us. We should be able to do a bigger size. Like, that feels terrible. And I remember when my doctor said, oh, we're going to have to use the baby speculum. And it just felt very discouraging. And so right off the bat, you can ask for that smaller speculum. In fact, you can also buy a speculum on Amazon that is more comfortable than potentially the one that they're going to use. The design of the metal speculum that is most popular across the world is not as comfortable as some of the newer speculums that have come out that may also be plastic, but it also round rather than kind of like pointy at the end like duck lips. So why don't you arm yourself with the tools and even practice with that speculum at home? There are so many ways for you to have an absolute slamming success with your pelvic exam. Okay. I'm rooting for you. I know you've got this. You are capable. And the gifts that I have for you to solidify this are twofold. There's a video called How to Make Your Pelvic Exam a Slamming Success inside of my Pleasant and Effective Dilating course. I would love to send you that video for free. As long as you message me, just let me know, Katrin, I'd love that video on pelvic exams, please. And on top of that, one of my clients that I supported, who is now a mother, she conceived, she got pregnant, she gave birth. It was incredible. She did our Sexually Liberated Group program. She created a letter. It was in fact her letter that I then made anonymous and kind of more of into a template that she had sent to her medical professional to actually let her know about her vaginismus story, the history with that at the time that she was having a pelvic exam. This letter can be the template that you use to inform your medical professional. So if you would like the video and the letter, just message me and I will send them over to you. And I really hope that they serve you in a beautiful way in your journey. Okay. Now we've got a second question for our Q&A session today. Vaginismus, after he cheated with online relationships, how long will my mind take to heal so my body can relax? First of all, I'm so sorry that you went through the experience of having been cheated on. I cannot speak from experience. I have no idea how it feels. I have experience with this from the side of being a supportive partner to someone who had been cheated on. And I can only imagine the repercussions that this has had for you when it comes to trust of men, of partners in general, trust of commitment, trust of their word. Will their promise be broken again? And feeling like you were lied to and tricked, and all of the personal guilt and shame that may have even come with that part of not having seen it earlier. I don't want to put these into your story. I don't know if they're relevant for you, but I just wanted to let you know that I can only imagine how hard it's been. And of course, the protective body response comes online when there is this breach of trust, this very deep wound on a heart level, on a connection level with a human around how can I open up to them again? Literally, how can I open up to them again? And so the body closes. Why? Because the body speaks our no for us. Vaginismus is our no being spoken for us. Often, as a tangent here, as an offside, it is up to us in the process of overcoming vaginismus, right? Symbolically, this is really what happens when we overcome vaginismus. We have to take back responsibility of our no verbally in our expression so that the body can notice us. Let's say this is the vagina and she's looking up at us and she says, oh, Katrin is speaking my no for me. She heard me that I've been saying no all this time and now she's speaking it for me. Okay, I don't have to hold that responsibility anymore. Oh, that's such a relief. She's doing that for us. And there may be 10 or 15 sessions of penetration. Let's say it's a dilating practice, right? Where you feel the body is saying no. You honor that no verbally and with your actions. You do not dilate that day. And it is on the next time of dilating that the body starts to feel like, She's held my no all this time. I can trust her. I can trust that she's listening to me every step of the way. So what if I actually put a little physical sensation, which is the way the body communicates, that will signal to her that I'm actually a yes today, that I'm a yes to a little bit more. And when we hear that and we honor that, we create even more space for the yes to continue to evolve and to bubble up. But that's only because we took back our no and we created spaciousness for the yes to come online again. This is how sexual desire starts to come back. It is through honoring the no. It is not about forcing the yes and pushing through and trying and making our body feel like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to have an orgasm right now. I'm supposed to have self-pleasure, even though I'm a no to it. I'm not going to release this protective response if I'm not honored. And so overcoming vaginismus is a huge relationship builder between our body and our mind. So I want you to know that in the situation of having been cheated on, your body is on your side, and it makes sense that vaginismus is coming online. And it's about healing that on an emotional level, mental level, and actually setting boundaries and really choosing for yourself what you desire. Do you want to continue to grow your relationship and heal your relationship with that person moving forward? And everything that is required of you, but also of him, right? Because he's got a lot of cleanup to do and responsibility to take here. And if he's willing to, maybe this is an option for the two of you. And if he's not, or if he is, and you choose that this is still not the life that you want, then it's a massive test of life for you now to set the boundaries of what is it that you stand for and what is it that you don't stand for. Okay, so just a little piece there on boundaries and taking back your no and really knowing what you deserve and moving forward in whatever way is actually authentic to you and resonates for you. So your question was, how long will my mind take to heal so my body can relax? The how long piece, I really can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know how long. What I do know is that women have overcome vaginismus in a time period of 2 months, in a time period of 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year, many years, depending on their approach. But oftentimes when we take on a holistic approach, things happen much, much faster than if we hadn't really looked at the full picture of what's required to overcome a body response like vaginismus, and also in your case to heal from lost trust. What I want to say here is that you've asked, how long will it take for my mind to heal in order for my body to relax? And I invite you to consider this. Yes, the mind is a huge component of healing. And you've probably heard me talk about the subconscious mind representing 95% of our behaviors. So we've got to go to the deeper levels of the mind. But in fact, the subconscious mind, where does it live? It lives in the programming of each cell of our body. This is Bruce Lipton's work, the biology of belief. This is what the subconscious belief change process that I'm trained in and I facilitate for the women that I support comes from and is supported by Bruce Lipton, because it's true that the body, in fact, holds the programming of what we call the subconscious mind. And so it's not necessarily in here, it's about how the body holds the memory. The mind holds the memory too, but the body keeps the score. And this is a beautiful book I invite you to read called The Body Keeps the Score, to start this journey of really creating the integration of how important release of past memories, tension, trauma, how important it is to do that from the body rather than the mind. So the body is holding the pain that you experienced from this situation. The body has stopped trusting him. That's why the body decided to have the protective body response of vaginismus come online for you. in order to hold your truth that you don't trust him yet. So the body is speaking its wisdom, and hence, please remember that your focus should be on somatic-based practices to release the pain from the body. There are so many of these that you can engage in. It's more about movement. With tension and trauma releasing exercises, it's about activating the release response that the central nervous system has of neurogenic muscle tremors. And neurogenic muscle tremors help you turn on the self-cleaning function of the body to literally release through shaking, just like animals do in the wild after stressful situations, to release all the stress hormones of everyday life, including, but also to release the emotional trauma that has literally been stored in the musculature and in the fascia of your body. So we've got to look at somatic-based practices and continue to work with the conscious mind as is needed, and to gather insights for yourself and to have intentional conversations with yourself and perhaps also with your partner. All of those things need to happen at the same time. But when we overlook the role of the body and we only focus on the mind, what happens is we are only working with 5% of that conscious mind, which is responsible for 5% of our behavior. And the 95% of everything underneath the surface, that iceberg underneath the surface, all of that lives in the body. We've got to do the body-based work. How long will it take? I'm sorry, I really can't tell you. I already mentioned this, and I just want to reiterate that, because whenever we put a time pressure on ourselves with overcoming vaginismus or with other pieces of life and the goals that we have, but especially with something that is so body focused like overcoming vaginismus, we're in fact putting pressure on the body again to perform on time, to perform as our mind expects it to. But the body has a mind of its own, and the body has a clock of its own and a timing that is important to be honored. Menstrual cycle awareness here is also a really big component of that, because our cyclical nature also informs us very much on when the right times of our cycles are for certain experiences, when we're actually supposed to rest, because in those days and weeks, rest is actually the most productive thing we can do. And the point is that the body has its own timing. So all you can ask of yourself is for you to continuously be committed to listening to her, listening to your body, listening to your vulva, listening to your vagina, creating that relationship with her, creating the mind-to-body connection. That's why we've called our yoga program the Mind-to-Body Connection Yoga, because it's about that. It's about creating the connection. And overcoming vaginismus is very much a process of moving a very short distance, moving the distance from the head into the heart and into the entire body. If you have any follow-up questions, I invite you to reach out to me personally. I invite you to maybe type the question in our next Q&R thread in time for our next Q&R session. Again, I want you to know that you're doing incredibly. You have been faced with a really difficult circumstance that is testing you on a mental, emotional, and physical and spiritual level. And I know that you have grown so much already, and you're going to come out of this sexually liberated and an evolved version of who you are, but not because you changed, because you stripped all of the layers that weren't really you and you rediscovered yourself. You found your authentic self. You let go of all of the masks, all of the expectations that weigh so heavily on us. And you're really, truly committed and dedicated to your authenticity, which involves releasing everything that you have been holding, suppressed emotions. In the case of the cheating scenario, we've got to feel the anger. We've got to feel the grief. We've got to feel the intensity. That's what somatic practices are all about as well. Like TRE, you can be bawling your eyes out during that release. And that's an amazing piece of evidence that things are moving in the system. So you've got to feel it to heal it. And I know that you're capable of creating a safe container in which to heal it, to feel it, and all of the above. You are capable. We are all capable. If another woman could do it, you can do it too. And I believe in you so, so, so deeply. Okay. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you again soon. Bye.